All right, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to our the Oklahoma chapter's SABR Day meeting. It's February 1st. What SABR has designated as SABR Day. Um, we had initially planned for something a little bit different than what we're going to have, but we're going to roll with it. Have a sort of a extemporaneous meeting, the hot stove edition. Talk about Hall of Fame and spring training's just around the corner and all of that. But batting leadoff today, we have Howard Johnson with a presentation that he has asked to share. And with that, I will yield the floor to him. Howard, take it away.
Okay, have I got it or am I here? Now you have it, right? Okay,
Yeah, I got it.
okay. My hobby, ever since I retired, is my one shot at statistics, which I do multiple linear regressions because I have a program that does it for me. And I initially started when, as retrosheet data became available to say in some detail, working from the years 1951 to 2005. Everything is scaled by plate appearances to give frequency and also bring up to snuff the short seasons. I mean, we know the 2020 season, but also 1981 and back before World War before the lively ball, there were a number of 140 game seasons, and if you go back farther, you will. But anyway, a regression equation that estimates the average runs scored by a team. The significant parameters are singles, doubles, triples, home runs, strikeouts, free passes. Got strikeouts in there twice. That's not good. Stolen bases, caught stealing, grounded double play, sacrifice hit, which has now been taken out, and bases gained and bases lost. Bases gained is unforced advancement by a runner. And I give a runner credit, a batter credit for moving the guy up as far as his hit. Everything after that goes to the runner. Bases lost is anybody who gets thrown out after he reaches first base. The adjusted R squared of 0.948 is just short of what statisticians want for, hey, this is truth, which is 0.95. From 1914 and 1914, the year before 1912, used an alternate formula based on the statistics that are available there. Then the results are further modified for the league, adjusting as a league with an average runs for plate appearance of 0.12. Actual number is more like 0.115. When a designated hitter is involved, I take it up to 1.25 or 0.125, and also adjusted as the player, as I highest individuals, is on a team that has 6,000 plate appearances, which evens out a whole lot of things. Okay, 2024 model results. There's the American League here, and Judge with the first two columns of numbers past the age. This is an age. Then you have his actual plate appearances and his model produced numbers, which shows 162.9. Now I modified the plate appearances for 6,000 at bats. You notice he loses about 28 because he batted high in batting order, relatively uh, long schedule, and modifying his run per plate appearances around 2.24, and his model runs 164.7. Now you can take these numbers. One reason I like the linear method is you can take these numbers for a team, add them up, individuals, add them up, and you'll get the same value you'll get for doing a team computation. And then there's an error always, and you could adjust if one wanted to, could adjust back to how many runs actually team scored as opposed to the model. And also you can, if you want to judge the percentage of a team's runs for which this batter was, or player, also includes base running, provided. So it kind of works kind of like runs created or those other things, except it's linear. And the ones you might take note of who they are. Aaron Judge, a big gap, 26 runs between him and number 2 is Bobby Witt, and then Juan Soto, Vladimir Guerrero, Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Alvarez, Jose Ramirez, Brent Rooker, and Jaron Duran all were credited with over 100 runs. I've got the 15 here shown. Move up. There's the National League. Of course, Ohtani was the leader in the National League. And after his adjustments, now he'd batted leadoff a lot, so he lost a lot of putouts. I had a lot of plate appearances. But he had a modified RPA of 0.202 for worth 141.6 runs. Down from there, Marcell Ozuna, Kyle Schwarber, who is kind of an outlier. Never have figured how he gets up here, but in total, because he bats a lot. Bryce Harper, those the only ones in the National League topped 100 this particular season. Others, Contreras, De La Cruz, Lindor, Martell, on down the line, Freddie Freeman in 13th place. The other one, what I was going to want to do here was put in a lifetime thing, but unfortunately I broke a program and the thing runs forever because you got something like 20,000 players to go through. And it's been running overnight, and I hope still running in the background. It'll take another day. But I did extract the single season best records according to this model. And Babe Ruth kind of dominates his era. But Ruth, 184 and a half runs, slightly under his unadjusted totals. And 921, his unadjusted totals 196, was the highest I've seen. But with the adjustment, because of the run environment in that league, was 179.1. Then comes Ted Williams, Ruth, Williams, Musial, Bonds, Williams, Bonds. Hey, this is getting familiar, isn't it? Ruth, Mickey Mantle, 1957, not 1956. Carl Yastrzemski, Dick Allen, Honus Wagner, Aaron Judge, Stan Musial, Ted Williams again, Ty Cobb, Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth again, and Chuck Klein. The highest average on that list, I believe, is Bonds 2002. Yeah, it barely beats out Bonds 2004. I think probably I didn't hit up here because he wasn't the season leader in total, but I think Ted Williams, 1958, 57. Erie beat up here Erie hit 388. We'll have the average lead. And I find it an interesting tool. I like to play with it. And that's just, I thought I'd share it with you guys. And if anybody has any comments or questions, I'd certainly entertain them.
This is all pretty interesting, and it sort of ties in with what you said about it's similar to the runs created statistic. The first thing I thought of when you were going through this too is it seems like this might also be an interesting way to sort of look at perhaps Pythagorean win-loss, if you wanted to really.
Yeah, you can do anything with these numbers you want to after you've got them.
Right.
The question is, how valid is it to apply these team formula to individuals? But runs created, you run in, it's got there's multiplication in there, and it's not definitely nonlinear. You can't do the individual players, add them up and get the team. And that's the weakness of runs created. Actually, somebody many years ago, Inside Baseball, I think it was, I see over there on the floor, had a he called linear weights type thing, which resolved with departure from average. And I don't think that's very good. Here, the average is 0.12 or 0.128. But he did it, and he did it, I think, just by trial and error. It's a pretty massive type thing. But he didn't have the base running statistics. Hank and Jesse and Kevin, I know, have seen this before in some form. And I finally added the base running. This is in addition to stealing.
Howard, I can't see the screen, but what were the numbers for Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt again?
Oh, Judge 164.7 runs, Witt 138.4, Juan Soto 138.
That really puts some perspective on what a year Judge had, because I didn't see Judge play a lot, but I saw Witt play a lot on television. He had a year that was just amazing to me.
Yeah, that's because of what I got there. Is one of the reasons I wanted to show this, because it does. Where is he? He's on this list somewhere.
Number 18.
Yeah. Number 18. Well, it's line 18.
Yeah.
So it's 15th.
It's just interesting to me, the names you don't see on here. There's no Aaron, there's no Mays.
Yeah, they were consistently good.
Yeah, there's no monster season in there for them.
Highlight season, and neither one of them walked that much until they got late.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So they made a lot of outs.
Yeah.
What were Mickey's numbers in 1956?
Mickey in 56. I don't have that handy.
Oh, okay.
But he led the league by a considerable number. He come in anyone. This is tops off. Only got 15 names there.
Okay. And
15 names out of how many seasons have been played since 1876 is it's pretty elite.
Did you run a comparison for how big the gaps are in different years between number one and the rest of the? Was Judge's year, the amount that he was better than Bobby Witt, was that an unusual number?
Well,
to have as a gap?
Go back here. Look at it now, just for 1 year. Witt had more plate appearances, but Judge just dominated the score. The 130 numbers in there, that's typical of what we get for league leaders. 134 runs. And usually there's no more than 2 or 3 guys have an RPA of over 0.2. Now, in this particular year, there were 2. And that was Judge 0.244, 0.24. I like decimals. It breaks ties. And Witt was a 0.194, Soto 0.201. And those were the 3 best hitters in the American League, best offensive players. I don't think there's much doubt about that. I think it would be a pretty unanimous type thing. I don't believe that I broke any news to people with that. In the National League, Ohtani with a 22-run edge over Ozuna. And I don't know why some years it comes to lots of guys at 100 and other years very few, although it's all compressed. I guess it must be the range between the best and the worst. There are more worse players in some years, and other years there are more, and they're totally dominant. Which another thing could explain the absence of Frank Robinson, Henry Aaron, Willie Mays, who ranked very high in the lifetime things, which unfortunately I can't show you, and have lots of championships. And others, but really the dominant figures on something like this in baseball lore are Ruth, Bonds, however he came by it, Williams. Those are the 3 names, and they all walked a lot. In addition to hitting high for high averages and with power. Now I corrected this for the atmosphere, the environment in the league. I've hesitated to try to put in park factors because they don't know how to use them. Whether use them, Kevin's got them for every hitting event, a park factor for left-handers and right-handed batters. And that could be done, but it's more work than I want to put in. I'm old. Any more questions?
What did the Warriors look like, out of curiosity?
Well, what?
The World War II. Were there big gaps, or did the numbers go way down, or maybe you don't have that data yet? Maybe the computer's still running it.
I still don't quite understand what you said.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm in my car, but I was asking if during World War II, what happened to these numbers?
Oh, well, they come to consolidate. World War II was treated just exactly like, in my final analysis, just like every other year. But they were down when you get over the unadjusted types. Before you adjusted, yeah, World War II was definitely down. And I think it had an impact on Williams and Musial, both. I don't think they're on this list, but 1946, but they both had very high numbers for that year. But it was a down offensive year. So they looked really good. You get others since, well, except for Bonds, since Ted Williams, really don't have anybody in here. Mantle got in one time. So, yeah, these are fine. What I like is the model runs is within the era and within the environment he was playing.
So since you have the formula there, it might be interesting because I'm thinking of 2 players that I am big fans of and that I follow in Jaron Duran and Kyle Schwarber. It would be interesting to see just in how the formula is laid out, how much of their appearance on these lists is due to certain statistical factors. I know Kyle Schwarber, he's sort of the modern day king of the 3 true outcomes, and
Jaron Duran doesn't have a lot of power, but he'll steal bags. He hits a bunch of triples, hits a bunch of doubles playing at Fenway. So it sort of rewards, efficiency. Um, and so you get to see a lot of diverse names like Ketel Marte too. Not a big power guy, but he's just hits a lot of doubles, gets on base a lot. So it would be interesting for me just on an individual level to see how much of each statistic is contributing to individual players. I could sort of have a theory, like I said, on Duran and Schwarber.
At a stepwise progression, I used all the variables I had. Only I had it still in there, but sacrifice hit was rejected. You get to the 9.945 level with reached on error, free pass, grounded double plays, triples, singles, doubles, bases gained, and home runs. And everything else after that, I think, is pretty much gravy. It's just doesn't change much. You get to 0.9 with free passes, singles, doubles, bases gained, and home runs. In fact, the bases gained is the second variable that makes it in the first, makes it in the second step. Of course, home runs is the first, it's dominant. But I did include the reached on error because I'd never seen that statistic until recently. Of course, RetroCheat carries it and on their web pages. And I don't know if it's a skill or not, but hey, it's something the batter does, and he gets on base. He has to hit the ball. So,
unless it's a catcher error.
That's not an error. Yeah. Catcher error on a wild pitch is on a passed ball is not an error.
I know, but I mean, like throws wild to first or something, after a strike.
That's rare.
That's an error.
Extremely rare, but it does happen. Yeah, that's a need to.
Was the adjustment for the years when they changed the definition of a sacrifice hit very difficult? Did that take a lot of work?
That's one reason I've tried my best to eliminate it. This actually is I've had the wrong formula up there, but numbers are all the same, but sacrifice didn't make it. And I didn't try sacrifice flies because I don't believe in it. That's personal prejudice. I think they do more harm than good most times. You see the crowd will go wild if the man is a third and the guy hits a fly ball at the outfield and he scores. You're 2 runs behind, there's nobody on base. That was not a good play. And it also wasn't intentional. He was trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark or in an alley. But anyway, that's my biases. But then, I'm an old guy allowed to be cranky.
Yeah, well, sacrifice wouldn't make much difference in the numbers anyway. I don't think if you included it. Now, reached on error is a skill somewhat. Right-handed batters reach more often than left-handers, and guys with some speed generally reach more often on reached on errors, and guys that hit ground balls reach more often. So there is some I guess we'd call skill.
Well, yeah, I feel like the fielder's under pressure because of what the batter did, and a batter hustled down the line.
Yeah. So there is some. It's not a lot.
Yeah, it's not a great skill, but it has the same almost the same value as a single, which it does. In the game, it's just that it wasn't necessarily a batter's skill as a fielder mess up.
Right.
But I like to include it because one thing, and I get more data from the available from the dead ball era. I want to see how much impact that has because these scores tail off really badly in the early part of the 19th century, the dead ball. Now, I have the theory that so many more errors were committed and they're treated out. Most cases, and I want to treat them as, hey, you got on base. You hit the ball at the right people.
Yeah. And park factors would make some difference for certain guys. Not a huge difference normally, but like Mandel had to play in Yankee Stadium, which was really pitcher friendly most of the time. So he might move up a little bit. Yeah, but
well, there's some, park factors. Some of them will be very important, but it varies right hand, left hand. You had a hitter like Ralph Kiner when they built Greenberg Gardens in Forbes Field, became a much more powerful hitter than he was before. Other hitters like Mel Ott had the right field line Polo Grounds his whole career. Chuck Klein had Baker Bowl with that big wall in right field. Cost him a lot of home runs, but he sure got a lot of doubles. And so those are facts have to be in there. Royal Stadium was built so that George Brett could hit triples. I know Brett wasn't playing when they designed it, but that's it was that way.
yeah, and like the Polo Grounds really wasn't hitter friendly overall, but if you could pull the ball, it was definitely run friendly. But it suppressed doubles. Doubles were not good.
Stan Musial had short porch in right field too, which helped him. Again, more doubles cost him home runs, but got a lot of doubles out of it.
Yeah, and Fenway is notorious for doubles historically. So another one.
Yeah, of course, Fenway, Ted Williams couldn't get him out at home. I think his on base percentage is something close to 500 in Fenway Park. Partly because he didn't have nobody pitched left-handers against him, which gave him a distinct advantage because his split is pretty enormous.
Yeah, and they moved the wall in Fenway and right center about the time he started. So,
well, I think all the time Williams played that right center was mammoth.
No, they moved it in. They moved it in 1937 or something like that, right?
Well, it was still in my memory, it's a big area out there.
Yeah, it was still big, but it was.
He had to pull it just pretty much to right field to get it out of the ballpark. Get anything else to go to right center, and it would have to be a really mammoth hit to get out. But there was, some people in their statistics are inflated if they played with Cubs in a year when the prevailing wind was off the lake. They're not going to do very well. If it's going the other way, it's a small bandbox park. Evans Field was a bandbox. So you get people like Duke Snyder will show up very well. But power hitters get the benefit here. But that's the way runs are scored. Of course, my theory is that the 1.5 or whatever it is value coefficient for home runs is 1.5 because there were runners on base for a lot of them. Getting on base definitely has its advantages, which are in free passes. That's walks in, hit by pitch. Yeah.
Back to the error conversation. Just yesterday, Sam Miller used to work for ESPN. Now he's got his own Substack. Did an article on reaching on error. And just briefly, like the start of it, like it was a user submitted question. But he says in 1961, first year after expansion, 1.15 base runners reached base on error per game. In 2024, it's 0.44 batters, and that the reached on error is disappearing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And if you between the mammoth gloves they use. It's hard to get a ball past them, an infielder. And my gripes is with the now larger base, they don't have to throw as far. It's not by much, but a lot of those plays are really close.
And all the fielders are bigger and faster, and they have statistics to tell them where to stand. So it's going to be.
Well, people are faster than they were, or athletes faster than they were 40 years ago.
Yeah, but the positioning is important too now, right? They know where guys hit the ball, so they didn't have that in the 60s and early.
Yeah, they had the AstroTurf, and fields are maintained better, much better.
Yeah.
You got to remember, one of the figures, obscure figures in the history of baseball, is a shortstop, I think, played mostly for Cleveland in the 1890s. Pebbly Jack Glasscock. Because what he did while waiting for pitcher throw, he would throw pebbles off the field. And of course, those of us who are old enough remember 1960 World Series, where a pebble deflected the ball to Tony Kubek's throat, and therefore kept an inning alive for the Pirates and allowed them to tie the ball game. And then Mazeroski did his home run. So yeah, fields are much better. Much better.
Maintained. One of my more eccentric beliefs, and I have plenty of rather eccentric ones, is that in many sports, the players have gotten so big and fast and strong that the field is too crowded. I think that's true of basketball for sure, and to a certain extent, football. And what gave rise to this in my mind was I saw a 6-on-6 Texas football game. The score was 74-71, the end of the game. Very entertaining. But to a certain extent, that's true in baseball. You know, the 9 fielders can cover, especially like you said, with the big gloves and the statistics, can cover so much more territory. I almost wonder if what baseball would be like if you just removed a fielder.
And especially now with sort of and the post Cal Ripken era, now we've got guys my height playing shortstop, whereas back in the day you were a good foot shorter playing shortstop. Now you got guys like Ellie De La Cruz and O'Neill Cruz for the Pirates out there, 6'5", 6'6", playing shortstop. That doesn't hurt either. Yeah.
Well, those guys though, can they get off like infielders, shortstops, and pass? Some of the really great fielding shortstops were absolutely slow. Playing the batter and getting that first step or 2 steps toward the ball was the difference. That includes people like Lou Boudreau, Eddie Miller, Marty Marion. These guys, Dick Groat, these guys couldn't run for beans. And Groat was a great basketball player. He was quick and had quick hands. Nowadays, don't hit that. For one thing, you don't hit that many ground balls. Everybody's playing with the launch angle ranging somewhere between 90 and 0. And you don't have that many ground balls with the shifts. You don't get the eliminated or greatly reduced singles. I mean, ground ball through the infield is the infielder's not where he's supposed to be. I mean, the third baseman fielding the ball in right field is kind of ridiculous, but it worked.
Yeah, with it, with almost every batter either striking out or hitting a fly ball, you don't need Ozzie Smith at shortstop because they're only going to hit a couple balls that way the whole game, right? So you want somebody that can hit with power and put them in at shortstop, and so
baseball used to have room for the
batting.
You used to have room for the little guy.
Yeah.
Both pitchers and batters. I don't think it does so much anymore. Hey, Bobby Shantz will never happen again.
Yeah, or Raphael Belliard, a guy I remember watching as a kid. Yeah, there's he'd be stuck playing in Korea or something. He would have never made the majors now.
Well, and knuckleball pitchers would never even be looked at. These today, they only might throw a knuckleball but it's hard to hit. Still hard to hit. But nobody throws it because, hey, they got to be big and strong, throw hard. Arm 3 pitches, strike people out. I think it's been a detriment to the game. I like to see base runners run.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree that that's what makes baseball entertaining is the ball in play. You want to see runners running, fielders fielding, making throws. Strikeout or home run to me is a little boring.
Well, the home run was dramatic.
Yes.
Days past. I mean, a team was only hitting 100 home runs a year in 154 ball games. The home runs they hit were unexpected. Now you expect these guys to hit home runs. I
think I mentioned
74, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mentioned in my article about the Miami Indians team of 21 that there was an article in the paper that said this is in 1921, it used to be slide, Kelly, slide. Now it's hit a homer, Kelly, hit a homer. So they were receiving it even then. So.
Well, yeah, it was Ruth hitting the home runs. Nobody else was.
Honestly, that's why I enjoyed softball so much the last few years. Is the ball is in play a lot. There's a lot of fielding going on, a lot of base running.
It has that point. That's slow pitch softball. Fast pitch softball is a striking out game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting more like that all the time. I mean, OU's kind of been a home run hitting team for several years.
Yes. Of course, then I can always complain about a designated hitter too, but I lost the war on that one.
Yes.
Another thing I don't like is that I think is changing the game a little bit is these larger bases. They want to increase the number of stolen bases, but they're also decreasing the number of infield hits because the first baseman is farther out towards the infield.
Yes.
Infield, the thrower. So that's I'm still a fan. And I don't have any more to add unless someone has more discussion.
Well, another one of my eccentric beliefs is that I'd like to see players able to slide past second and third without fear of being out if they return to the base before going on, so that they could slide through the base. So we wouldn't have these endless replays of did his hand come off for a nanosecond, while the tag was being applied. They'd have to slide. I'm not in favor of letting them run through the base, but they can run through first. So I don't think it'd be that big a change in the game, but I think it'd be.
I think it'd be bad. So and run through second. You're either on a base, you're advancing towards a base, or returning to a base. And that's it. You can the first base and home plate are the only ones you can overrun. That creates lots of interesting plays too. If a guy gets hung up because he overruns a base, you got to hold on to it.
But it is hard to slide and stay contacted with the base. I mean, for a second you're gonna lose contact. Your leg's gonna bounce up or something, and then they're gonna.
And if we were just going by old-fashioned umpires, it wouldn't be a problem. But when they do a replay and they go frame by frame, and between 0.037 and 0.045. His hand came off the base. That's ridiculous. That's just.
That's that's not oversliding the base though. That's you're still there. You're still in general area head. The base is bigger now than it used to be. At least they have outlawed the rolling block at second base
Yes.
and home. Al McRae would have never been able to make it today.
Yeah, I took a pretty good hit one time at home plate. I was catching and I got laid out pretty good. I'll never forget that. Big old bruiser. I think I had a concussion, but we didn't even know what a concussion was back then. So I just kept playing.
It gave you a headache.
Fortunately, I wasn't calling the pitches, so it didn't matter.
That's another of my pet peeves, calling pitches from the bench.
Yeah.
See, it's totally what they do in college ball. In fact, they've got now a radio, so the pitcher and catcher both get the message from the pitching coach. And you're losing a good part of the game from these players. They're not learning strategy. They're following strategy. But anyway, another pet peeve. I've got a lot of pet peeves.
Well, there was a documentary about Greg Maddux that came out a while back, and they were interviewing Eddie Perez, who was his personal catcher for the Braves. And the sort of system they had on how they would call pitches would be based on how Greg Maddux would catch the ball coming back from Perez. If he caught it underhanded, if he caught it this way. And that was Maddux dictating to Perez what he wanted the next pitch to be. Which there's a reason why they called him the professor, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather have something like that than, pulling out your James Bond watch and hitting, slider,
Well, that's saying one of the things that I think is an injustice as far as a Hall of Fame selection. It's obvious why, because offense is the game. But back in the day, catchers didn't hit. They're a rare exception. Mickey Cochran, Gabby Hartnett, and then up here after the war, Roy Campanella, Yogi Berra, then Johnny Bench. These guys are all hitters, but they're very good catchers too. But you overlook people like Jim Hegan, Del Crandall, who I think should be a marginal Hall of Famer. I don't think he quite qualifies, but he'd certainly be in my Hall of Fame for his handling of pitchers. Of course, Jim Hegan, that kept him in the majors for 15 years because he couldn't hit a lick. An old player, Billy Sullivan Sr., caught for the White Sox back in the teens. And he was a 200 hitter, but he was considered to be the most valuable player on the team. And in fact, the year he couldn't play because of an injury, they tanked, for what it's worth. Another one, I can't remember his name now, caught with Brooklyn for years. One of the worst hitters ever to play in major leagues. And he played out a 10-year career, played a lot of games. This method I've got also will identify, I don't show it people, but I'll also identify people that can't hit or couldn't hit. The worst hitter in history of baseball, according to my method, is Dean Chance. He beats out Bob Buell by a fairly small margin.
So
isn't there a famous picture of Dean Chance swinging at a ball that's like 3 feet below his bat or something, or 3 feet above his bat? I can't remember that.
Chance is pathetic, and Buell was pathetic. But as far as regular players concerned, in the 20th century, Tim Foley, now he had a pretty good career as a shortstop. He couldn't hit. Mark Belanger, excellent shortstop. There'd be no room for Belanger in a game today. You don't hit 240. Roy McMillan couldn't hit. Not very few of them did. In fact, shortstop basically did not hit, and neither did catchers until really 1950s.
Howard, are there any shortstops on the top of the list there?
We get down to lifetime record. Of course, Hannes Wagner is up there,
Right.
always using a different, slightly different metric. Another shortstop, we don't think of the shortstop, but Alex Rodriguez. Trying to think, I don't know if there are any others just off the top of my head who were shortstops. Ernie Banks, of course. But I can't think of it. Basically, it's reveals that outfielders and first basemen hit the ball more often with more and do more damage hitting than players other positions.
Who's the top third baseman by production on that metric?
Third baseman.
Yeah.
Mike Schmidt or Eddie Matthews.
I was going to guess Eddie Matthews, but I don't know that. I was going to guess Eddie Matthews, but
Schmidt walked a lot. Matthews hit in front of Aaron. They didn't really like to walk him. But he hit in front of Aaron because he walked more often than Aaron would, and therefore you had base runners, and Henry came back. I'm sure I'm missing someone. I always am. At the top of the list, of course, Pete Rose spent time as third baseman. In the lifetime statistic, he ranks very high because he played forever and was good. But on the, again, the ultimate years, these guys hit with power and they walked a lot. They had high. Ops plus works, except it's Ops plus and it doesn't give you runs. Oh, I did playing around one time, put ops into a formula similar to what I have here. And it did well. About the same as what I've got. So that's useful.
Yeah, I would imagine Brett and Boggs would be up there and third baseman, but
I can
probably not the top.
Going by memory, the top's leaders in total, it's between Bonds, Cobb, and Ruth, which has surprised nobody, and Aaron. No, not Aaron. Aaron's up there. Yeah, he played a long time. Ted Williams suffers because he didn't bat as often as these other guys. And there's somebody else in there who.
The year that Brett hit 390, where did he? Do you have that year on your stats? I don't remember what year it was.
It's 1980. I remember because I was in North Dakota and had a reporter from Kansas City who was up there covering the drought, and so we spent a lot of time talking baseball. I don't know if you ever went out in the field and studied the drought. Let me try something here. You know. X. Okay, we have here. This rates them according to average. Brett, because of short time, was lost out to Reggie Jackson in total. Well, Cecil Cooper and Reggie Jackson. But an average is 235 runs per at bat. Is pretty darn good.
I think that's also about how many drinks he averages per inning in a game now.
Well, Brett was right, had more RBIs than he played games.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing. Of course, he missed. Would he have slumped during those 40 odd games that he missed? Royal sure did. Well, I'll turn it back to Kevin, to Jesse. Get about the more important things.
Oh no, Howard, that was actually really cool. That was really well done. I was just making notes on some of that here. Um, but yeah, basically, what I just had jotted down was just some sort of notes to go over. One of my favorite things to spend way too much time thinking and talking about is the Hall of Fame. Um, we had the results announced earlier, well, I guess technically last month now, that Ichiro, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner have all gotten in. And once again, there always has to be that one guy, doesn't there? There always has to be that one person to prevent Ichiro from going in unanimously. And look, everyone, it's your ballot. You can do with it whatever you want. But come on. The guy debuted at age 27 and still managed to get 3,000 hits. And he seems like beyond reproach as a character person. But either way, they're all in. And what I found most interesting is looking forward at 2026, the new names that are going to be on the ballot. Yuck. There's no one on that's coming in that's gonna. The best guy in terms of WAR is Cole Hamels, which good career, World Series champion, all that. But Cole Hamels, Ryan Braun, Matt Kemp, Hunter Pence, Edwin Encarnacion. Yuck. But I think it's going to be interesting to see. Does that then mean Carlos Beltran gets in, Andrew Jones gets in, Chase Utley, Andy Pettit, Bobby Abreu, Mark Burley, Dustin Pedroia, whoever. I'm more interested to see when the writers are faced with kind of 2026 not looking great. What the writers do. They kind of got dragged over the coals a while back for not electing anybody for several years there a while back. So my thought there is, does anyone get it, like of all those names that I rattled off there, does any one of them get in next year, or do you think we see another blank year in 2026?
I don't think it's blank. I think Beltran's in for sure. Andrew Jones made a decent jump, so I think those two are your best bet for next year.
That's about right. I can't argue.
I was surprised with the amount of support that CC Sabathia ended up getting. I think one of the most interesting things to me looking forward is the evaluation of the starting pitcher when it comes to the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Felix Hernandez debuting at 20%, I think shows that the 300 wins aren't necessarily a benchmark that you need to get anymore as a starting pitcher to get in.
Yeah, and I think
250 is impressive in this era. That's what Sabathia reached, a little more.
250 is impressive in any era.
Yeah.
And particularly when you don't pitch complete games.
Right.
The pitchers, most of your 300, earlier 300 game or 250 or 200 game winners had a lot of complete games. As late as Warren Spahn, he had a majority of his starts were complete.
Right.
And nowadays, it's a world of relief pitchers anyway. Managers got to manage.
well,
So
they go
bring
in.
if you don't bring in the relief pitcher and you lose, you get hosed.
Well, the complete game has all but been eradicated. I know when Sabathia got in, they were talking about in 2009, he started out with Cleveland, and or I think it was 2009. He started out with Cleveland, was traded to Milwaukee um, mid-season. CC Sabathia led both the American and National League in complete games that year. He had two for the Brewers and three for the Indians. So yeah, there you go. That's a little fun fact for you.
Yeah, it looks like Beltran and Andrew Jones are really the only ones that are going to get elected next time. I mean,
Isn't he the one that has to overcome the trash can thing? Or
well,
am I
had
getting
to.
confused
they
with
have had to
somebody else?
overcome it. I mean, Beltran has, but I think he's going to, right? I mean,
He was a good enough player.
yeah, he's going to. Unfortunately, Utley is looking not his prospects aren't looking good unless 10 years from now he sneaks in or something. Which is kind of a shame. It just shows the writers just don't like all well-rounded players, right? Um, there's no flashy 3,000 hits or anything or 500 home runs, and they just don't like well-rounded, good defense, good base running, good hitting combinations. So his prospects aren't looking good already, but and Manny Ramirez isn't going to make it. So even though historically he would be a shoe-in, yeah, I think two next year, the two outfielders, two center fielders, which is good because center fielder is a little underrepresented probably.
And for Andrew Jones too, it's another one of my uh, pet peeves, kind of piggybacking on what Howard was talking about with defense, is Andrew Jones was probably the best defensive outfielder in my lifetime that I got to see his entire career. The guy was a stud, and he could rake, which was nice. But yeah, I understand. It seems like most of the hang up with Andrew Jones is that he fell off a cliff after his age 30 season, but a lot of people don't realize that he'd already played 10 seasons by then, um, and just got off to a hot start. And there need to be more of those just defensive stalwarts in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Howard mentioned Mark Belanger earlier, a guy who I think is like third all time in defensive WAR for whatever that's worth. Now, I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer per se, but he needs to be discussed more when talking about some of the best to ever play the game. And you have Brooks Robinson, Aparicio, Ozzie Smith, who couldn't hit for beans. So some of those guys are getting in, but yeah, I got to think Andrew Jones needs to be in and should be in, and I hope he does get in.
I think he will.
Yeah, he will, but I mean, his problem is he went from a great center fielder to a mediocre left fielder like really quick, right? I mean, it was
he plumped up pretty quickly.
Yes, exactly, right.
Age 30,
Dale Murphy
so his batting also dropped off. So the Hall of Fame likes guys with like 15, 20-year good careers, and they had trouble with guys like Jones who had a really pretty long streak where they're one of the best players in baseball, and then they don't keep adding, they don't get to 3,000 hits or whatever. They kind of fall off. So a lot of those guys don't get a lot of votes.
Yeah, he lasted longer than Dale Murphy. Same type of career though. Just all of a sudden gone.
Murphy was actually not that good a defensive player. He kind of was overrated on defense.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about Murphy as a ball player.
Yeah, he could hit. I mean, that was the thing, right? He could hit.
Well, I think too, getting back to the pitching metrics, people were talking about what CC Sabathia had. We're going to have, there's a very good chance, depending on if they all retire at the same time, Verlander, Scherzer, Greinke, Kershaw, all getting in and sort of being like the last aces of their ilk. And then you're going to start looking at down ballot guys who, by comparison, don't look as good as those guys, but who might have interesting Hall of Fame cases as time goes on. You think of guys like maybe John Lester or Tim Wakefield, guys who got to 200, but, you know, and had good careers, World Series champions and all that. But if that's going to be enough for them to get in subsequent ballots.
Is it going to do Chuck Schilling or Schilling any good?
That is the one that drives me the
Schilling,
absolute craziest. Kurt Schilling is one of the best pitchers of all time, a World Series hero for two franchises. Like, did he say a lot of ignorant and hateful stuff? Sure, but can we just put him in and just maybe promise not to let him have a speech or something? I don't know. But I mean, Kurt Schilling's got to be in. Like that is the one that drives me absolutely crazy. And I get why he's not, but come on, guys.
Well, he's off the ballot now, right? I don't think he's even eligible.
I think so.
So he's got to hope for like 10 more years from now or something that people forgive him or something.
His numbers are
I
similar
apologize
to Smoltz, aren't they?
I apologize for saying Chuck Schilling chose my generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew.
Second base.
Hey, I mean, I want to mention something. I work for the Rookie League Foundation of Oklahoma, which we're the nonprofit arm of the Comets. And about a year ago, I discovered a bunch of Oklahoma City 89er Hall of Fame plaques. And we've been sending these out. We've been slowly contacting folks. We got one to Rusty Staub's sister in Louisiana, to Jerry Grody's widow in Central Texas. And we got a bunch of them out, but we're having trouble locating certain. Probably we had 24 of them. I'd say 10 of them are out. Jim Kern came up to the ballpark last summer, and we gave him his plaque. We had to restore that one, but we have a couple here. I don't know if anyone knows if there's this is Boney Meese, if he has if anyone knows any of his children or grandchildren or anybody or anyone that's related to him that might want this. And these are like they're about 9 by 12. They're pretty cool. And I have one here for a guy named Howie Reed, who pitched for the 89ers in 67 and 68. And he passed away, and he pitched for the Dodgers a little bit, I think. And then he was several different teams, and he passed away in around Corpus Christi, Texas in the early 80s. And most of them I've been able to find like a living grandchild or widow or somebody, but for Reed, I've not been able to find anybody. And I don't know I don't know if I can, I was going to put my email in here, but if anyone can think of any clues how I can get rid of these two, maybe I can send a list of these other ones that we have.
So I'm thinking of the guy that does the grave search. What's his name, Jesse?
Yeah.
Buddy, the guy
Fred,
that
Fred Worth. Yeah.
Yeah, as he finds graves, he finds family members along the way, often that treat him.
What's the last name?
Worth.
Yeah, WORTH.
Okay, I'll try that one. We have.
I mean, I can try to find him because I've had some success with Negro League players who have died quite a while ago in finding some of their family. Sometimes.
Okay. Who should I email this list to that could get it to everybody?
You can just send it to me. I'm the president of the chapter. I can send it out I have the whole mailing list. I can send it out to everybody.
Okay. And your email is
let me throw it in the chat.
Yeah, we got Jim Kern, Doug Rader, Jim Gentile, Rusty Staub, Jerry Grody, J.R. Richard, Bob Watson, Cesar. Okay. Yeah. Dave L. Roberts, who was he played in the 60s for the 89ers. Then he went to Japan for quite a while. And actually, I got that to his son, Charles Harrison, Keith Moreland. I actually spoke to Keith. But yeah, there's about half of these. Half of them are ruined, or no, there's 4 of them that were ruined. And then half of them are probably half of the available ones have been sent. And like I said, probably half of them we're just not having any luck with. Well, with John Mayberry, I just got that to him in Kansas City. So it's Danny Walton played in the late 60s. We got that to his widow, and I believe she lives in Montana. But it's pretty cool tracking these people down, and they've been pretty appreciative of us taking the time to find them and get this to them. So, all right, I'll do that.
Yeah, that'd be cool to get those to the right people.
Yeah, we've got everyone in this chapter has different connections, different areas of expertise. So perhaps there's someone out there on that mailing list that'll be able to help. But I'll get that sent out.
Okay.
If you can just send me a list of the names.
Jesse, you may be able to get SABR headquarters put out.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good idea.
They help baseball fanatics over the country and the world, for that matter.
Couldn't hurt because as he was just going through some of the names, some of these people aren't living in Oklahoma. But if someone in maybe Seattle or something has a lead,
it seemed like Vonnie Meese, who was the beat writer for the 89ers back in those days with the Oklahoma Times, excellent sports writer. Seemed like he had a son who was also in the media here sometime after that, but I can't name. It just seems like, so I don't know.
Yeah, we've it's been a pretty cool assignment. Jim Morrison, who went on to play for the Pirates, I actually spoke to him about a month ago when we got him his plaque. He's living down in Florida, so it's kind of a fun project. So I'll do that. Thank you.
To get back to the Hall of Fame just for a second, when I was there, one of the things I enjoyed reading was Henry Chadwick's plaque this last year. And I realized I don't know how writers and broadcasters stuff get into the Hall of Fame. What's the procedure?
Well, I mean, technically they don't. It's depending on how pedantic you want to be, it's the writers and announcers and what have you aren't inducted into the Hall of Fame. They get what's called the Ford C. Frick Award, and then there's another award for one's for broadcasters, one's for writers. So you think of the late great Bob Uecker got one of those awards. One of my favorite writers, Tim Kirkjian, got one of those awards. Joe Castiglione, the guy who calls Red Sox games, he got one last year. They're not in the Hall of Fame, but like anyone who's ever been to the museum, there is a little wing dedicated to those folks.
Yeah, there are certain founders of the game, of which Chadwick was definitely one of them, who didn't play, didn't umpire, and didn't even own teams. Chadwick set the scoring rules. We still use Chadwick scoring rules. And there are some others don't come to mind right away, but very minor players sometimes. Again, I have trouble remembering back to 1876. I come close, but
they're generally considered contributors.
Yes,
some of those guys like Chadwick that didn't play. I think honestly, if you put Tommy John on a contributor ballot as opposed to a player ballot, I think he might be in that way.
I think he might be as a player if people had any sense.
Well, seeing Chadwick's plaque inspired me to go back and read some of his stuff. And he was a very good writer. I really have enjoyed reading a couple of his books, some of his articles and things I can find online. And he was a big promoter. He wasn't just a journalist.
Yeah.
Interesting
he invented the box score.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, there's been some talk about that, right? Contributors and having Bill James or somebody be elected, and also coaches, right? There's also been talk about, well, we should elect some coaches, Dave Duncan or somebody,
Leo Mazzoni.
Yeah, Leo was
Uh,
on thing, but
yeah.
No, that's one of my. I just remember as a kid, just he was a hoot just to watching the dugout going back and forth for 9 innings.
yeah. But there's been talk, but there's not really a big like a groundswell of support to do those kind of things. So Chadwick's like the only one I think that's really a rider that's actually in the real Hall of Fame right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
But
I think most of the
it
rest
could
of them
happen. I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me if some broadcasters start getting in as real, not just the Ford Frick Award, but
got
actually get in.
Bill Rizzuto's in the Hall of Fame.
I went out to watch the ceremony with Tony Gwynn and Cal Ripken. And being a lifelong Royals fan, that was the year Denny Matthews got the Ford Frick Award. So that was kind of special.
One of the interesting things to me when I was at the hall was they have a little section that's a tribute to super fans, like the Red Sox lady with the cowbell and stuff. And I don't remember their names, the names of the fans they have. I thought that was a cool display.
Yeah, I saw that this last year too. That Hilda from Brooklyn or whatever I think is in the display. I can't remember the other ones either, but yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, to elect a fan to the thing.
Maybe we just need an auxiliary wing or something.
Yeah, and while we're at it, let's put in the Philly fanatic and Mr. Met too.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a question for Howard on his analysis. I missed the first just couple minutes, but what software did you use to go through your linear regressions?
It's called Statistics, and currently using Statistics 10, STATISTIX.
Okay.
It's not one of your biggies, but it's cheap. Well, not really cheap, but I could afford it. Let's put it that way. Or get the big statistical package. For one thing, they do a lot of things that I don't even understand.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you looked at
I learned how to do while I was at work. Learned how to do multiple stepwise regressions, and I learned how to do it because I started doing it on baseball statistics. That I understood. The climate, didn't work so well with me, but I did learn how to use the one tool.
As an undergraduate in statistics at Kansas State, I remember I was doing basketball statistics, and of course they only had a dozen metrics back then, and I put them all in, and I was playing with stepwise. I think the first week I learned it, and I threw them in there, and it threw everything out but score. So I told my professor, hey, guess what? Score is important. The team with the highest points wins. I think he told that story for the next 20 years about the dangers of stepwise regression. Nothing real earth shattering on that one that I found.
A while back, I read Ted Owens' memoir, which is called At the Hang Up. Have any of you read that? Of course, it's mainly about basketball, but he won the National Junior College Championship with the team at Cameron. And it's an interesting story how that happened. I'd recommend that book if you want to know more.
Well, baseball is kind of the best thing for statistics because everything is recorded. And there are a whole lot of people have to do the same thing. I mean, everybody bats with pitchers, and pitchers used to bat too. Everybody plays fielders except in a field, so you can compare that. And every move they make, and it's getting more so now with the analytics and started measuring spin rates and things like that. If anybody knows a good formula, a way to get runs saved for fielders, let me know. Cheap way. I don't want to pay for it.
Are you talking modern ones or are you talking historical? Because there's two different,
yes,
very
yes.
different ways.
Yes, but particularly oh yes, because that would fit with what I've got here. Would give some net runs for a ball player.
If you're talking historical, defensive regression analysis is probably the most accurate one, I think. But you know, it's hard because you're just using errors, put outs, assists, which don't always tell you.
Yeah,
you
tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but it's probably the best one as far as I'm concerned. But of course, the modern ones now they have the, you know, you have
Oh
the
yeah, average number of steps
StatCast.
for a ball.
I guess we call them StatCast, and they're actually getting a lot better, right? I think they're very good now at identifying fielding, and you know the position that the fielder starts in, and how many feet he covers, and all that stuff, and converting that into runs saved. So it's pretty interesting.
I've made a couple of stabs at that and got nowhere. What I have here are the offensive players could be done for pitchers just as easily if someone was interested. I'm not. I don't know quite how to interpret results for one thing.
Well, pitchers are hard though because there's fielding.
But
right?
ERA works.
The whole thing, you can't hardly separate pitching and fielding on the defense side.
ERA works for me. That's
yeah. Well, but ERA is highly influenced by the defense, and
well, that's what I said.
And also earned runs, unearned runs,
and
you know
what the one Bill James did use years ago, DER, which is
yes,
ratio plays made to balls in play on a team basis, but also defense is a team thing.
Right, and basically that's what you know, Baseball Reference uses that pretty much as their adjustment for defense. But the problem is you can have two different pitchers on the same team, and the defense behind them was totally different on the days they pitched. You know,
well, there's another metric they could use, which is runs.
Yeah,
and put in the error, the players that reach base on error behind that pitcher. That will have an impact. And if the other guy's hitting all fly balls, he won't have many people reaching on error.
Right. That's exactly right. Right. Fly ball pitchers have fewer reached on errors.
Yeah. So
I think on the defensive metrics, the one I found interesting is just when they show the efficiency of the route they take to the ball. Because watching some of the Royals players, I'm like, where are you going? That's not even where the ball is. And so some of them are clearly more efficient than others, or read it better, or have better hearing the way it comes off the bat or something. But that one's always intrigued me.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell me that Willie Mays can track a fly ball better than Kyle Sorber?
Good point.
Yeah, Mickey Mantle when Mickey Mantle was playing at Joplin, was it 50? You know, they were discussing whether to leave him at shortstop or move him to the outfield. That's why he wore number 6. But one of the sports writers that was writing about that said, in the outfield, he's fast enough to run down his mistakes.
Sounds like
yeah.
Probably was written about him.
Yeah,
Willie Wilson was the same way.
Well, but things do change over time, right? The thing about outfielders is when they're young, 24 and under, they're faster.
That's right.
Their routes are not as good. But as they get older, they slow down, but they get better at their doing their routes and their positioning and things. So
that's right. If they can hit, they change positions.
Yeah, and if they can
always moving to the less difficult, and they wind up being designated hitters.
Our first baseman.
And when they can't play first base anymore. Hey,
Yeah.
I was a first baseman. Not a good one, but a first baseman.
It's all just
I was an outfielder, so
with the advent of the DH, it's all just a gradual progression back to the dugout. You start out in center field, they put you at one of the corner infield positions. Eventually, you're just in the dugout watching the game. Yeah.
But with the DH, Smokey Burgess could have played forever.
yeah, but they've kind of reversed that now, though. I mean, that used to be the case, but now they use the DH just as a
Well,
give our shortstop a day off from the field. We're gonna let him DH. So you don't quite have that as a position really like you used to, where a guy DH'd for 150 games. They don't do that anymore, except in very rare cases, you know.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Kyle Schwarber for the Phillies, Yoshida for the Red Sox because he has a frying pan for a glove. There's a couple, but
Right, couple.
a lot of
I mean,
times yeah, like what Kevin said, it's just sort of rotating. There's like 3 or 4 different dudes who can play DH.
right.
Yeah,
David Ortiz was kind of the last of the breed, right? Really, I mean,
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
few guys that like you said, that
He only had to
they
play
could
first
DH.
base in interleague games. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting how they use it now. That it's not a position. It's okay. Who's our worst fielding outfielder? We're gonna stick him there a lot of times, but we're gonna rotate it and we're gonna put, like I said, even the shortstop might DH if he needs a day off or something from. But he can still hit decently, right? I mean,
The way you describe that regression from outfield to first to DH is very funny. It reminds me of those diagrams that show the evolution of human beings, little tiny monkeys and then chimpanzees and then, the gradual rise. This is sort of the opposite of that. I think you could make a very funny diagram of that. And you could say, like, where is this person in that regression?
Yeah, like sort of a visual of like a diamond and just yeah.
Yeah. And how many innings did you play at each position? You could say, well, okay, he's down to 58 innings at first base. That means he's probably due to be DH next year or something.
It's kind of like the opposite of what they did with Craig Biggio, who starts out as catcher, they put him at second, and then they turf him in the outfield. Um, which not enough said about that. The guy played all of the up the middle defensive positions and still had 3,000 hits. Like that's no small feat, but yeah, it's basically DHing in reverse. He went farther and farther out.
Yeah, talking of defense, I mean, it has been kind of interesting to me with the new metrics to find out that it looks like defense does kind of peak at age 24, which is pretty young. And then some guys are able to kind of sustain that for a while because they get more experience and, they can position better and you become more sure-handed, so they make fewer errors and they kind of can maintain the value. But basically, the speed and the range kind of peaks at about age 24, which is a lot younger than I originally thought. So guys are starting to slide. 25, 26, they're already starting to slide on their defense and potentially move maybe to a easier position.
As I can speak from experience, as you get older, you get slower.
Yes.
You get heavier.
I know that. Yes. I used to be a speedy outfielder, believe it or not, a long time ago. Now I look more like a linebacker or something.
I couldn't be an outfielder. I couldn't throw. First base was it, and left-handed. That's a bad combination.
Well, left-handed, you're limited. That's the thing, right? They want you to be a pitcher, first baseman, or outfielder.
That was something I actually saw. I think it was just yesterday. They were talking about the last regular left-handed catcher was Benny DiStefano for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I didn't realize that, I mean, that was basically 30 years ago, or more than 30 years ago, that there hasn't been a regular left-handed catcher since then. Which I'm sure there's a valid reason for. I didn't spend too much time thinking about it, but normally you hear handedness, you immediately associate it with first base, and that makes sense. But yeah, the catcher one was wild for me.
Well, with a catcher, that's a couple of things. One of which batters are more right-handed batters. So the throw to second is much easier. If you have to throw to first, well, the position to throw isn't real great. For a right-hander, he can see the base as he turns. And the other one is, have you ever tried to find a left-handed catcher's mitt?
Yeah.
That's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. It's if they don't let left-handers play catcher, it seemed like there was a left-handed catcher in the SEC last year in college baseball, but I don't remember which team it was.
It's not impossible. I mean, only fools do it anyway. So,
Hey, watch it, buddy.
discretion is a better part of valor.
I didn't play catcher much. I hated it, but
They call it the tools of ignorance for a reason.
yes.
When
It's a
you
term you don't hear much anymore.
you were talking about the clips of Greg Maddux being interviewed, there were several of them going around, and I listened to the one about how he called his pitches by his positioning of his glove when he caught the ball. I also like the one about when, I guess it was the catcher that was talking, that they had a lead in a game and the team was pretty competitive, and he threw a meatball, Maddox did, and he hit a home run off of it, and the catcher's like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "We're going to face them again in the playoffs. He's going to expect this pitch, and I'm never going to give it to him, and I'm going to strike him out." And sure enough, they played forward and they were in the playoffs. He was waiting on that pitch and he threw something else and struck out. And he told the catcher, "Remember what I told you 2 months ago?" Talking about a professor of the game.
Yeah, yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. And there was one stat I saw, like he retired with 999 career walks, which I got to think was probably deliberate on his part. He didn't want to get to 1,000, but over 150 of them were intentional. So, yeah, um, like you think about like back in the 90s, you had Tony Gwynn versus Greg Maddux. Like in terms of matchups of people who were absolute masters of their craft, you don't get very many better than that, of just two guys at the peak of their skill set. Like they were both like Gwynn never struck out, Maddox never walked anybody. Yeah.
And they both despise those too. You know, they despise striking out or they despise walking anybody. So that's a great combination that you mentioned.
Yeah, I was just looking in the modern era, the only other left-handed catchers were Mike Squires for a little bit, which I remember him, and then Dale Long, which some of you guys will remember. He's a little before my time, but that's
Not
been pretty
mine.
much it for 100 years, other than this stuff I know.
I guess that sets me in case. I remember Dale Long.
I figured you did. He retired before I started watching baseball.
I just made in my earlier analysis talking about, I got thinking about, I picked those years, but just because data were available, but that was the golden age of baseball between my age 10 and 64. I didn't understand it before that, and afterwards I don't understand it again.
The only time I think like Dale Long, I just immediately go to like he was the first guy to homer in 8 straight games, which I think is still the record. We've had a couple people tie it. That's about the only thing I know about Dale Long, other than the fact that he played for the Cubs for a little bit.
That's why he gets mentioned still, right? Is
Yep.
it because of the 8 games?
The eight-
Yeah, it
The
beats
8
not
games
being
with
mentioned
home-
at all.
The eight games with home runs were it. And then the Pirates came up with Dick Stewart, who needs Dale Long. Now, Long had a reasonable career. He's journeyman, played on bad ball clubs mostly. But he'd get World Series, I think, with the Yankees. Not sure, but I think he did.
Yeah, and Mike Squires played for the White Sox. I remember. He probably played for a couple other teams.
Yeah, I can vaguely remember that.
He mostly played first base too, but he did catch some.
Catching, I think, was just an emergency type thing with him.
Yeah. Well, he was a really good first baseman defensively,
Yes, he
but he
was.
couldn't hit. He couldn't hit like a first baseman, so he kind of became a utility catcher, like a third string catcher too. Back when they had 3 catchers, sometimes,
All right. Well, I didn't really have much else here jotted down. I wanted to discuss the Hall of Fame stuff. Um, we've got that well covered. Still got another 2 weeks before pitchers and catchers start reporting and all of that. I know they've got a pretty full schedule of meetings on Sabre Day, so I think we could probably go ahead and call it a little bit early and let whoever's up next get a chance to get set up here. Thank you all for hopping on. Howard, thanks for that presentation. That was really cool. I've been jotting some notes down about that. And I will be putting all of this into the annual report that I have to submit to Big Saber later. In the meantime, my email, which I put in the chat, is always open if anyone has any other ideas for future meetings, whether they be Zoom or in person. Feel free to chime in whenever you like. I'm always up for suggestions. I'm thinking probably May will be the next one. Give us some time to get some things situated. Give us something to talk about. We'll have a month into the season, which will be just around the time that the Chicago White Sox are eliminated from playoff contention. And since Ron's not here, I can say that. Yeah, thank you all for hopping on, and we'll catch you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jesse.
You got it.